The first woman stepped back before the Duke of Rivenhall had crossed half the ballroom. The second followed so quickly that her retreat might have passed for accident, had a third not shifted at the same instant and opened a perfect arc of polished floor around him. It was the evening of the 2nd of July, 1816, and Palliser House glittered beneath chandeliers for the Waterloo Widows' subscription ball. White lilies stood in silver bowls. Officers wore decorations earned beneath foreign skies. Widows in black sat beneath portraits of men who had never been required to survive the battles they commissioned. Near the west wall, beside a marble pillar, Miss Constance Davenant stood with Lady Davenant and watched cruelty arrange itself with the precision of a dance. Her grey-blue silk had been altered twice to remain respectable. One glove had been mended at the thumb. At 31, unmarried and dependent upon her aunt's household, she had become useful enough to accompany a baronet's widow, and unimportant enough to be forgotten once she arrived. No gentleman had asked for her dance card. No mother had measured her as a threat. That was why she saw what the others missed. Miss Ursula Palliser stood near the musicians in lilac satin, her fan half open. When her gaze moved left, two young women drew back. When the fan closed, another lady lowered her eyes and guided her daughter away. No signal was large enough to accuse. Together, they created an empty crescent around Gabriel Trelawney, Duke of Rivenhall. He continued forward as though the room had not altered to reject him. He wore black evening clothes without ornament, and the scar along the left side of his face remained fully visible beneath the candles. It began near his temple, crossed his cheek, and narrowed toward his jaw. 13 months had turned it pale. Society had turned it into a verdict. He did not angle his face toward shadow. He did not lift a hand to conceal it. Only his left hand betrayed him. It closed once at his side, then became still. Constance felt the dented brass compass inside her reticule press against her wrist. It had belonged to her brother Owen. The regimental chaplain had returned it with Owen's effects the previous July, together with a letter written the day after Waterloo. Constance had read one sentence so often that the fold beneath it had softened. Rivenhall stood when others could not. "Constance," Lady Davenant said quietly. Her aunt had followed her gaze. "Don't. I haven't done anything." "That is precisely what I hope will continue." Across the floor, Ursula's fan opened again. The women nearest Gabriel widened the space. One laughed too brightly. Another pretended to examine the flowers. Their mothers looked relieved. Ursula waited beyond the empty crescent, poised to advance only after the rejection had become complete. Constance understood the design. Gabriel was to believe that fear was unanimous. Then Ursula would cross what everyone else had abandoned and appear compassionate enough to accept the scarred Duke when no other woman would. It was a marriage maneuver, built upon humiliation. Gabriel stopped. The orchestra continued tuning for one awkward moment before the violins also seemed to notice the silence. Constance looked at the scar, then at the man forced to stand beneath every opinion attached to it. She remembered Owen's sentence. She remembered opening his letter alone because Lady Davenant had feared grief might become unbearable if witnessed. She remembered that Owen had died 3 days after Waterloo, while Gabriel had returned alive, carrying a wound society preferred to discuss rather than understand. Ursula shifted 1 foot forward. Constance stepped away from the wall. "Constance." Lady Davenant's whisper held alarm, not command. Constance crossed the first yard before anyone understood what she intended. By the second, heads had begun to turn. By the third, Ursula's fan had stopped moving. The open floor seemed to widen with every step. Silk rustled behind Constance. Conversation thinned. She felt judgment gather around her before she reached him, but the compass at her wrist remained steady. Gabriel watched her approach without relief. His expression sharpened, as though he expected someone to call her back or reveal that she had been sent as part of another performance. Constance stopped at the proper distance and curtsied. "Your Grace, I believe this set has been left without a lady." The words carried farther than she intended. Gabriel looked beyond her toward the women who had retreated, then returned his attention to Constance. "Have you been sent to me, Miss Davenant?" His voice was low and controlled. "I have not." "Has anyone asked this of you?" "No." "Then you understand what they will say." Constance glanced once toward the room. "They have said worse about people who deserved it less." Something altered in his eyes. Not amusement. Recognition. "And you still wish to stand up with me?" "I would not have crossed the floor otherwise." He held her gaze for one heartbeat longer, offering her a final chance to withdraw. Then he bowed. "I should be honored." The orchestra master lifted his bow with visible relief. Gabriel offered his hand. Constance placed hers in it. His glove was warm, his grip careful, as though even courtesy might be mistaken for force. Before they could take their places, Ursula crossed the remaining distance. "How touching," she said. Her smile was flawless. A companion should be cautious, though. Gratitude can make one forget one's position. Lady Davenant went still beside the wall. Several guests looked away, which in London was often how cruelty obtained permission. Constance opened her mouth, but Gabriel spoke first. "You will apologize to Miss Davenant." Ursula's smile did not move. "I'm afraid you've misunderstood me." "I have not." His tone remained quiet. That made the correction carry. "Miss Davenant's position is beside me for this dance, because I accepted her as my partner. Your position is that of a lady who has insulted a guest in her father's house." Color rose beneath Ursula's powder. "I didn't intend offense." Then the apology should be simple. Constance felt the room turn, eager now to enjoy Ursula's embarrassment as readily as it had prepared to enjoy Gabriel's. She did not want the cruelty reversed. She wanted it stopped. "Your Grace," she said, "the musicians are waiting." Gabriel looked at her. He understood at once. The restraint in his face deepened. Ursula did not miss the exchange. "I apologize, Miss Davenant." "Thank you," Constance replied, "nothing more." Gabriel led her into the set. The first figure began. Constance knew the quadrille well enough to move without thought, which was fortunate because every eye in the ballroom followed them. Gabriel danced with precise control. He did not favor one side. The scar did not alter the line of his shoulders, the steadiness of his step, or the care with which he guided her through the figures. What altered him was being watched for weakness. Each time they separated, his attention returned to her as though confirming she had not regretted the choice. During a crossing figure, he said, "You did not need to intervene, no, yet you did." "Yes." They passed another couple and came together again. "Why?" he asked. Constance kept her voice low. "Because they wanted you to believe their fear was a judgment." His gaze held hers. "And it was not. Fear is often only fear, Your Grace. It is rarely wisdom." The next figure carried them apart before he could answer. When they met again, his expression had changed. The guarded severity remained, but something beneath it had loosened. He did not thank her. Gratitude would have reduced her decision to charity. Instead, he attended to her. When the hem of her altered gown caught near her slipper, he adjusted his pace before she stumbled. When Ursula moved beside Sir Reuben near the supper-room doors, he noticed. When Lady Davenant's concern failed to ease, he noticed that too. He seemed to observe everything, perhaps because he had spent a year entering rooms where every glance could become a wound. When the dance ended, he escorted Constance back through a crowd that parted without being asked. Lady Davenant curtsied. "Your Grace, Lady Davenant." Gabriel released Constance's hand. At that moment, the reticule cord slipped against her wrist. A narrow edge of brass showed between the folds of silk. The dent caught the chandelier light. Gabriel's face changed so completely that Constance forgot the watching room. His breath stopped. His left hand closed once, harder than before, then opened. He did not reach for the object. He looked at her instead. "Miss Davenant," he said, and for the first time his voice was no longer controlled. "Where did you obtain that compass?" "It belonged to my brother," Constance said. Gabriel's gaze remained fixed upon the narrow edge of brass visible between the folds of her reticule. For one unguarded instant, recognition stripped away the reserve of a duke and left only a man confronted by something he had not expected to see again. His breath stopped. The scar along his left cheek tightened as his jaw set. "Captain Owen Davenant?" he asked. "Yes." Lady Davenant looked sharply between them, but Gabriel recovered before the surrounding guests could turn curiosity into entertainment. He did not ask how the compass had come to Constance, whether Owen had spoken of him, or why she carried it that night. Instead, he stepped slightly nearer, enough to shield the object from view without touching her. "I will not question you here," he said. "Thank you, Your Grace. Nor will I speak of your brother without your permission." The promise was quiet, yet it carried more weight than insistence would have done. Constance closed the reticule and secured the cord around her wrist. Before she could answer, the supper-room doors opened and the company began to move. A current of silk, black coats, fans, and lowered voices drew toward the long table beyond. Lady Davenant glanced into the room, then stopped. Her expression changed. Constance followed her gaze and saw that the place card set beside her aunt's chair had disappeared. Another guest's name occupied the space. The alteration was too exact to be accidental, and too small to challenge without making Constance appear vain. It was punishment arranged with the same care as the ballroom recoil. "It appears there has been a change," Lady Davenant said. Gabriel looked once toward the table. "There has." Sir Reuben Palliser approached before anyone could summon a servant. He was broad through the shoulders, elegantly dressed, and practiced in the kind of warmth that allowed a man to injure another while appearing reasonable. "Your Grace, Lady Davenant." "Miss Davenant, I hope there has not been some confusion." "Miss Davenant's place has been removed," Gabriel said. Sir Reuben turned his head as though noticing the arrangement for the first time. These charitable gatherings test even the best trained household. A card is misplaced, a servant misunderstands, and a trifle suddenly acquires meaning. Then restore it. Gabriel did not raise his voice. The command reached farther because he did not. Sir Reuben's smile remained, though less of it reached his eyes. "Of course, if we can determine where Miss Davenant was originally seated." "Beside Lady Davenant. I saw the card when I entered. Ursula joined them, her lilac satin bright beneath the candles. Papa, I'm certain it was only a mistake." Constance met her gaze. Ursula's expression held gentle concern, as if she regretted the inconvenience rather than having arranged it. Sir Reuben signalled to a footman. "Return Miss Davenant's card at once." The servant bowed. Gabriel looked at Sir Reuben, not at the servant. A charity established for widows cannot preach mercy while using humiliation to govern its guests. A stillness spread through the nearest group. Sir Reuben's pleasant expression hardened by a fraction. "You mistake us, Your Grace." Then the correction should cost you nothing. Constance saw several guests begin to watch with the same appetite they had brought to the ballroom. She had no desire to become the centre of another public correction, nor to give Ursula the pleasure of appearing persecuted. "Lady Davenant," she said, "shall we go in?" Her aunt understood at once. Yes. Gabriel offered Lady Davenant his arm and escorted both women toward the table. Constance's card had been restored by the time they arrived. Gabriel seated Lady Davenant first, then drew out Constance's chair with exact courtesy. He chose the place opposite her rather than beside her. The arrangement was public enough to discourage scandal, and close enough to let everyone understand that he had not withdrawn his attention. Conversation began in uncertain fragments. A colonel's widow asked about subscription accounts. An elderly viscount praised Sir Reuben's generosity. Two young women who had stepped back from Gabriel during the quadrille kept their eyes lowered. Constance ate very little. The compass rested hidden against her wrist. Each time she felt its weight, she remembered the look on Gabriel's face. He had known Owen, not merely his name, the compass itself. The urge to ask how was almost painful, but she held it behind her teeth. Gabriel had refused to turn her brother into spectacle. She would offer him the same restraint. Ursula waited until the first course had been removed before speaking. "Miss Davenant, London will admire your courage tomorrow." Her tone made admiration sound like accusation. Constance placed her fork beside her plate. "London is generous with stories it did not witness clearly." "It witnessed enough," Ursula smiled, though some may wonder whether the gesture was prepared in advance. Lady Davenant's fan stopped moving. Gabriel's gaze lifted, but he did not interrupt. He was giving Constance room to answer for herself. "Prepared by whom?" Constance asked. "I couldn't say." "Then perhaps you should not suggest it." Ursula's smile thinned. "You have never sought attention before tonight." "No, yet you crossed a ballroom when every eye could follow you." "I crossed because a gentleman had been deliberately left without a partner. And because of your brother." The question was soft enough to sound compassionate. It was also the first attempt to connect Owen's death to Constance's action in public. "My brother was not in the ballroom," Constance said. "My choice was." Ursula tilted her head. People may not see the distinction. People often fail to see distinctions that inconvenience them. Across the table, the elderly viscount lowered his wineglass to hide a smile. Sir Reuben entered the conversation with a genial laugh. "My daughter takes society's judgments too seriously, Miss Davenant. No offence was intended." "Then none need be defended." A pause followed. Gabriel's expression did not change, but approval warmed his eyes. He had restored her place. He had not taken her voice. The difference reached her more deeply than any compliment. Ursula turned to another guest. Yet the rumour had already begun to move from face to face. Constance could feel it taking shape. She had not acted from courage, they would say. She had staged an opportunity. She had used grief. She had placed a scarred duke under an obligation. By morning, society would polish the cruelty until it resembled reason. Gabriel seemed to sense the direction of her thoughts. During a lull, he said quietly, "You are not required to remain until the end. I know. Would you prefer to leave?" No. His gaze sharpened. Why? Because leaving now would allow Miss Palliser to decide what my courage can endure. A faint line appeared between his brows. You should not have to prove anything. I am not proving it. I am refusing to surrender it. He absorbed the answer in silence. When supper ended, Gabriel escorted Lady Davenant and Constance to the entrance hall. Rain had begun beyond the portico, tapping softly against the waiting carriage roofs. A footman brought Lady Davenant's shawl and Constance's modest evening cloak. Gabriel waited until her aunt was occupied, then spoke in a voice too low for anyone else to hear. May I send my card? You may send it to Lady Davenant, and if she receives me, I shall be present. He inclined his head. That is what I intended. Lady Davenant looked over at them. Tomorrow is too soon. The day after tomorrow, Gabriel asked. Send your card first. I prefer to preserve at least the appearance that dukes do not arrange my household. A wise precaution. His eyes returned to Constance. I meant what I said. I will not speak of Captain Davenant without your leave. Nor will I ask about the compass until we are private, she replied. Something eased in his face. He offered his hand to help her into the carriage. His touch was brief and careful. No declaration passed between them, only an agreement to wait until truth could be treated with dignity. The carriage pulled away from Palliser House beneath the rain. For several streets, Lady Davenant said nothing. London passed beyond the wet glass in blurred lamps and dark stone. Constance sat opposite her with both hands folded over the reticule. At last her aunt spoke. London may forgive a duke for being eccentric. It will not forgive a companion for making half its unmarried women appear cowardly. They managed that without my assistance. You understand what I mean? I do. Lady Davenant studied her. Did you cross because of Owen? Constance looked down at her hands. I knew the Duke had saved him. From the letter? Yes. And His Grace does not know you still possess it? Not yet. Did you cross that room because you owed him gratitude? Constance remembered Gabriel standing alone while society mistook collective fear for moral judgment. She remembered how he had asked whether she had been sent, giving her an escape before accepting her hand. No, she said. Gratitude doesn't cross a room. Choice does. Lady Davenant's expression softened despite herself. I have never seen you stand straighter. When the carriage reached Davenant House, a mounted footman in Rivenhall livery was just turning away from the steps. Inside the hall, their servant waited with a silver salver. Upon it lay Gabriel's calling card. Beneath his name, one sentence had been written in a firm hand. I knew your brother. On the 5th of July, the Duke of Rivenhall arrived at Davenant House, precisely within the hour Lady Davenant had permitted, and Constance knew before the footman announced him that opening her brother's last letter would require more courage than crossing any ballroom. The drawing-room had been arranged for propriety rather than ease. Lady Davenant occupied the chair nearest the hearth, though no fire was needed in the summer warmth. Constance sat beside the locked escritoire, with the brass compass hidden in her reticule and Gabriel's calling card resting inside the desk. A tea tray waited untouched. When Gabriel entered, daylight from the tall windows caught the scar along the left side of his face and made it appear less like a mark of legend than what it was. Healed skin, a line the world had decided to interpret before asking what it meant. He bowed to Lady Davenant first, then to Constance. Thank you for receiving me. You were persistent without becoming improper, Lady Davenant said. It's a distinction many men fail to observe. A faint suggestion of amusement touched his eyes. I shall try not to ruin my reputation by improving further. That would be wise." Constance almost smiled, but Gabriel's attention had moved toward her reticule. He did not ask for the compass. He did not even glance at it twice. The restraint settled something inside her. She rose, crossed to the small table between the windows, and drew the instrument from its silk folds. The brass had dulled with age. The dent across the back caught the light. She placed it on the polished wood. Gabriel remained where he stood. For several seconds, he looked at the compass as though it contained a voice no one else could hear. "May I?" he asked. "Yes." He approached and lifted it carefully. His thumb found the dent without searching. Constance saw recognition pass through him again, quieter than at the ball, but no less powerful. "Owen said, 'This belonged to your father.' It did. He also said it had failed him twice and guided him once, which he considered a fair record for anything made by men." The words were so precisely Owen that Constance had to look away. Her brother had possessed a gift for making affection sound like complaint. Lady Davenant lowered her gaze to the tea tray and allowed silence to do what sympathy could not. Gabriel turned the compass over in his hand. "I removed it from his coat after Waterloo." Constance's fingers tightened against her skirt. "He still had it with him?" "He believed he had lost it. He asked for it when he was conscious." "Then he spoke to you?" "Yes." Gabriel set the compass down, but kept one hand beside it. "He was wounded on the 18th. He lived until the 21st. He was conscious at intervals." Constance knew those dates. She had repeated them privately for more than a year, as though precision could impose order upon grief. Hearing them from Gabriel changed their weight. "Were you with him when he died?" she asked. "Near the end. Not at the final moment." His honesty came without defense. "A chaplain was with him then." "The same chaplain who returned his effects." "I believe so." Constance sat because her knees had begun to feel uncertain. Gabriel remained standing until Lady Davenant indicated the chair opposite them. Only then did he take it. His gaze returned to Constance, not the compass. "If you wish to know how I received the scar, I will tell you." "I do." He drew one measured breath. Owen had been separated from the men nearest him. There was confusion after the fighting, and those who could move were being drawn back. "I returned because he was alive, and because leaving him there would have been a choice I could not defend afterward." His eyes shifted toward the window, though his attention had gone far beyond London. "The scar came while I was shielding him and trying to bring him out. It was not heroism, it was proximity." "You returned when others believed retreat was the sensible choice," Constance said. "That is not proximity." His gaze came back to hers. "Your brother would have done the same." "He did not write that." The room became still. Gabriel's hand withdrew from the compass. "He wrote to you?" "The day after the battle." A change crossed his face. Not suspicion. Something closer to hope, sharpened by fear of what hope might reveal. He was able to write a short letter about what happened, in part. Lady Davenant spoke quietly. "Constance has kept it private because Owen named men who survived. Some behaved with courage, others did not." Gabriel understood immediately, and publication could damage reputations without allowing those men to answer. "Yes," Constance said. "His grief was not mine to display for advantage." Gabriel studied her. "May I see it?" The question held no command, though his title could easily have turned it into one. Constance rose and went to the escritoire. She removed the key from the narrow chain at her waist and unlocked the lid. Beneath a packet of family papers lay the folded sheet that had arrived in July of the previous year. The seal had been broken by her own hand. The creases were worn but intact. She carried it back without unfolding it. There are names in this letter that must not leave this room. They won't. You will not ask to keep it. I won't. You will not use it against living men unless their own actions make silence impossible. Gabriel's jaw tightened, but he nodded. Agreed. Only then did Constance place the letter in his hand. He did not open it immediately. He looked first at the date. 19th June 1815. His thumb hovered near Owen's signature, but did not touch it. When he unfolded the page, the last trace of social composure left his expression. He read in silence. Constance knew every line. Owen had written that Rivenhall returned when retreat seemed the only sensible order. He had written that Gabriel placed himself between danger and a wounded man without hesitation. He had written that if he lived, Constance was to understand whose courage had given him another day. If he died, she was to know the fault did not belong to the man who had tried to save him. Gabriel read the final sentence twice. His breathing altered. He closed his eyes for one brief moment, then folded the letter along its existing creases and held it out to her. I didn't know. Constance accepted it. That he wrote. That he didn't blame me. The words were barely above a whisper. Why would he? Gabriel looked toward the faint reflection of his scar in the glass-fronted cabinet. Because I brought him back alive and still failed to bring him home. Grief rose in Constance, but it did not weaken her. My brother did not die believing you had failed him. His gaze returned to hers. The silence between them no longer felt empty. It carried Owen's hand, Owen's voice, and the weight of a burden finally shifting after too long upon one man's shoulders. Lady Davenant reached for the teapot, giving them the mercy of ordinary movement. Tea, Your Grace? Gabriel looked as if he had forgotten such things existed. Yes, thank you. Constance returned the letter to the escritoire and locked it. When she sat again, Gabriel had placed the compass exactly where she had left it. He did not reach for either object a second time. My solicitor could hold the letter under seal, he said. No. The answer came gently but without uncertainty. He did not argue. Very well. It belongs here for now, then here it remains. Lady Davenant poured the tea, but her expression had grown grave. There is another matter. Constance looked at her aunt. Last autumn, Sir Reuben Palliser requested several of Owen's letters for the memorial committee. He said he wished to prepare a record of officers who died after Waterloo. Gabriel's attention sharpened. How many did he borrow? 4. Were all 4 returned? Lady Davenant set down the teapot. 3. Constance turned toward her. You never told me one was missing. Sir Reuben claimed it had been misplaced among committee papers. I believed it would be found. What did the missing letter contain? Gabriel asked. Nothing concerning you, Lady Davenant replied. It was written before the battle. 4 full pages from Belgium. Constance felt the meaning before anyone spoke it. Enough of Owen's hand to copy. Gabriel's expression changed. Every trace of softness vanished, replaced by the controlled alertness of a man who had recognized danger but not yet named it. Then another memory seemed to strike him. Before the ball, Sir Reuben asked whether the Davenant girl had kept correspondence from Waterloo. Lady Davenant became very still. Constance looked toward the locked escritoire, then at the brass compass resting between them. For the first time, the object did not feel only like something returned from the dead. It felt like a warning they had sent ahead. 3 evenings after Gabriel left Davenant House, with Owen's absolution lodged where guilt had once been, Constance entered the King's Theatre and discovered that London had already invented a less generous explanation for everything between them. The Rivenhall box faced the stage from an angle that offered excellent sight of the performance and an even better view of every opera glass raised toward its occupants. Lady Davenant accepted Gabriel's invitation because refusal would have looked like fear, and because she had no intention of allowing society to decide that Constance should vanish after one dance and one private call. Gabriel waited at the entrance to the box in black evening clothes, his scar unhidden beneath the candles. He bowed first to Lady Davenant, then to Constance. "I hope the stairs weren't troublesome." "Only to my dignity," Lady Davenant replied. "A footman looked prepared to carry me. He has strict instructions not to rescue anyone without permission." His gaze moved to Constance as he spoke. The words were light. The meaning beneath them was not. "A sound rule," she said. "Rescue is often less welcome than the rescuer imagines." A faint warmth touched his expression. "I'm beginning to understand that." He seated Lady Davenant where the stage could be seen clearly, then placed Constance beside her and took the chair at Constance's other side. He remained near enough for quiet conversation, but not so near that anyone could accuse him of impropriety without admitting they had come to the opera only to watch the Rivenhall box. Across the theatre, Ursula Palliser sat in pale blue silk beneath a plume of white feathers. Sir Reuben stood behind her with two members of the Waterloo Widows' Subscription Committee. One of the men leaned toward him during the tuning the orchestra, and a fragment of his lowered voice carried across the brief hush between instruments. "Without Rivenhall's endorsement, the printer won't extend another quarter." Sir Reuben answered without looking toward Gabriel. "His Grace won't withdraw it over a ballroom misunderstanding." Constance kept her eyes upon the stage, though she had heard every word. Gabriel's hand became still upon his program. He had heard it too. 3 facts arranged themselves without effort. The committee required printing. Sir Reuben relied upon Gabriel's name. The printer's willingness to continue offering credit was not secure. None of it proved dishonesty, but it gave Sir Reuben a reason to fear scrutiny from the man whose endorsement sustained him. The orchestra began, and for a time the music forced the audience to face forward. Constance tried to attend to the performance, yet whispers moved with more persistence than melody. One lady in a neighboring box glanced toward Gabriel and murmured behind her fan. Another looked at Constance, then at the scar, then smiled with the pity reserved for women presumed grateful enough to mistake obligation for affection. Gabriel did not turn, only the line of his mouth changed. When Constance's program slipped from her lap, he caught it before it touched the floor and returned it without comment. His gloved hand did not linger. The restraint felt more intimate than touch. During the applause after the first aria, he leaned slightly toward her. "Palliser has spent the week telling patrons that my attention to you is a debt from Waterloo. That makes your conduct appear honorable, and yours purchased." The word landed exactly where Sir Reuben intended it to land, even though Gabriel spoke it with anger directed elsewhere. Constance kept her gaze upon the stage. Society prefers an explanation that preserves its own importance. "Does it concern you," Gabriel asked, "that people may decide affection between us cannot be believed?" The question came too directly for wit. Constance turned toward him. His face remained composed, but the scar tightened faintly as his jaw set. He had not asked whether she felt affection. He had asked whether the world's refusal to believe in it mattered. Society has not yet been asked to believe affection exists, she said. No, his voice lowered. It has merely begun to fear the possibility. The bell announcing the interval spared her from answering. Visitors moved between boxes carrying glasses, programs, and curiosity. Sir Reuben arrived first, accompanied by Ursula and the same committee patron who had spoken of the printer. He bowed with practiced warmth. Your Grace, Lady Davenant, Miss Davenant, how reassuring to see friendship surviving London's inventions. Friendship has survived worse things than conversation, Lady Davenant said. Ursula smiled, as though the remark had passed harmlessly over her. Miss Davenant, I hope you have recovered. I was not ill. Of course not. I only meant that learning the truth about Captain Davenant's final hours must have been distressing. Gabriel was still beside Constance. Ursula accepted a glass of lemonade from a passing tray. It cannot be easy to know he was left when retreat was called. The words entered the box with the chill of an opened door. Constance knew at once that they did not come from Owen's authentic letter. He had written that retreat seemed the only sensible order, but he had never written that he was left when it was called. The phrase sounded shaped to accuse, polished until blame could pass as recollection. Who told you that? Constance asked. Ursula's fingers tightened around the glass. I heard it discussed. By whom? I don't remember. Then perhaps you remember where? Ursula gave a soft laugh. Really, Miss Davenant, grief can make ordinary conversation seem mysterious. Ordinary conversation does not usually contain details absent from every public account. Sir Reuben stepped forward. The committee handled many officers' papers. My daughter may have heard a passage read without knowing its source. Constance looked at him. Which passage? I couldn't say. Then how do you know there was one? The committee patron shifted his weight. Ursula's expression hardened beneath her smile. I only know what was repeated. Captain Davenant was left behind when retreat was ordered, and His Grace returned too late to change the outcome. Gabriel's gaze sharpened, but he did not speak. Constance heard the construction beneath the sentence. Left behind, returned too late. Each phrase pressed blame into place. This was not an uncertain memory passed through a dozen mouths. It was a narrative. That is not what my brother wrote, she said. Ursula's eyes flickered before she recovered. Recognition, then caution. You have a letter from him? You still haven't answered my question. You didn't ask one. Who read those words to you? Sir Reuben's pleasant expression thinned. Miss Davenant, this is a theatre, not an inquiry. Then your daughter should not have brought a private death into it. Lady Davenant's fan stopped. 4 of my nephew's letters were entrusted to your committee, Sir Reuben. Only 3 were returned. The committee patron looked sharply toward him. Ursula turned to her father, and for the first time that evening, genuine surprise disturbed her composure. Sir Reuben answered without hesitation. A clerical misplacement, nothing more. Then return it, Lady Davenant said. The search continues. Constance watched Ursula instead of Sir Reuben. Did you read the missing letter? No, the denial came too quickly. Did you hear someone read it? I won't be questioned like a servant. A servant would still be expected to answer if she used a dead man's words to injure his sister. Colour rose in Ursula's face. Her gaze moved toward Gabriel, perhaps expecting him to rebuke Constance for exceeding her place. He did not. He remained beside her without taking the question away. Sir Reuben drew himself up. My daughter has already said she may have been mistaken. She hasn't said that, Constance replied. Gabriel spoke then, and only then. Miss Palliser will withdraw the assertion that Captain Davenant was abandoned. Ursula stared at him. I only repeated what I heard. Then repeat the correction. His voice was quiet enough to force the surrounding listeners to become silent if they wished to hear it. Ursula glanced toward the neighboring boxes. Too many faces had turned. I may have been mistaken. You were, Gabriel said. No speech followed. No public display of triumph. Constance saw the restraint in him and understood that it cost more than anger would have done. Ursula set down her lemonade. I'm sorry the subject caused distress. The subject didn't, Constance said. Your use of it did. Sir Reuben bowed stiffly. Come, Ursula. The Palliser party withdrew. The committee patron hesitated before following. He looked once toward Gabriel with an unease that had not been present when he entered. The second bell sounded. Lady Davenant resumed her seat. Well, she said, the interval was not dull. Gabriel looked at Constance. You heard something in her wording. Yes. What? The lights began to lower. Constance kept her voice beneath the rustle of the audience settling again. Owen never wrote that he was left when retreat was called. Miss Palliser didn't misremember a public account. Gabriel's face hardened. Then what did she hear? Constance looked across the theatre. Ursula sat rigid in pale blue while Sir Reuben stood behind her in shadow. Something written to sound like my brother, she said, and whoever read it to her expected it to be believed. On the 11th of July, Constance entered the portrait gallery at Rivenhall House and understood at once why Gabriel had chosen it. Afternoon light entered through the western windows in long, even bands, touching the gilt frames, the polished floor, and the faces of generations painted without blemish, hesitation, or regret. At the far end of the gallery, a small table had been prepared with black paper, ivory mount sheets, pencils, fine scissors, and a shaded lamp for the silhouettes. Constance had agreed to make for the Veterans' Charity Catalogue. Lady Davenant sat near the windows with her embroidery, close enough to satisfy propriety and far enough to allow conversation without turning every word into testimony. The brass compass rested inside Constance's reticule. Gabriel stood beneath a portrait of a younger version of himself, painted before Waterloo. The man in the frame had the same dark eyes and controlled mouth, but no scar crossed the left side of his face. You have brought an arsenal, Gabriel said, looking at her tools. Only paper and scissors. I have seen armies with less dangerous equipment. Then you have known poorly supplied armies. His mouth nearly curved. That is not impossible. He wore a dark coat and white neckcloth without ornament. In daylight, the scar looked less dramatic than it had beneath chandeliers or theatre candles. It began near his left temple, crossed his cheek, and narrowed toward the jaw. It was fully healed, pale against his skin, and did not diminish the strength of his face. What altered him was not the scar itself, but the expectation in his eyes. He was waiting for her to decide how much of him the world should be allowed to see. Constance arranged the paper and placed a straight-backed chair near the light. Please sit there, Your Grace. He obeyed with the caution of a man unaccustomed to surrendering control, even to an artist. Without instruction, he turned his right profile toward her, offering the unscarred side. The movement was smooth, practiced, and almost unconscious. Constance adjusted the lamp. The other side, if you please. Gabriel did not move. Lady Davenant's needle paused above her embroidery. You wish to draw the scar. I wish to draw your profile. Most people consider those separate choices. Most people are mistaken. His gaze remained upon her for a moment. Then he turned until the left side of his face met the light. The scar pulled faintly when he set his jaw, but nothing else changed. Constance lifted her pencil. Hold still. You give orders comfortably, only when necessary. That is what every commander says. I am not sending men into battle. No, you are deciding which version of a duke may appear in a public catalogue. Constance studied the line of his forehead, the bridge of his nose, the angle of his mouth, and the interruption of the scar along his cheek. There is only one version sitting before me. You might soften the line. I might. His eyes shifted toward her without moving his head. Will you? No. The answer came without ceremony. Something in his posture tightened. Why not? Constance touched pencil to paper, because removing it would create a man who did not live through the last year. Silence settled over the gallery. Outside, wheels passed along the street, muted by distance. Lady Davenant resumed her stitching. Gabriel looked forward again. Survival is not always considered an achievement. By the dead? Constance asked. By the living. The living are often ungrateful witnesses. A breath left him that might have become laughter if it had carried less pain. Constance began tracing the outer line. Silhouette portraiture allowed no careless kindness. The smallest alteration changed a face. She followed the curve of his brow, the firm bridge of his nose, and the shape of his mouth. When she reached the scar's path, Gabriel's left hand closed once upon the arm of the chair. She noticed. She did not ask. Some truths became smaller when forced into explanation. You are not curious, he said after several minutes. About what? How it felt. You told me how it happened. That was not my question. She set down the pencil and met his eyes. Do you want to tell me? Surprise entered his face. It was slight but unmistakable. He had prepared himself for intrusion, not permission. No. Then I am not curious enough to be cruel. Lady Davenant glanced up, then lowered her gaze again. Gabriel remained still, though the tension in his hand eased. You make restraint sound like kindness. Sometimes it is the only kind that does not ask to be admired. Constance returned to her work. She cut the black paper with slow precision, turning the sheet rather than forcing the scissors. Gabriel held his position, but not easily. His breath altered when she reached the line of the jaw. She did not reassure him. Reassurance offered too soon could become another demand that he comfort the person looking at him. When the final cut separated the profile from the surrounding paper, Constance mounted it upon ivory and placed it upright against a small stand. The scar remained. It did not dominate the image. It belonged within it. Gabriel rose and approached the table. For several seconds he said nothing. The silence was not rejection. It was recognition. The family painter came after I returned from Brussels, he said at last. My mother wanted a new portrait. Constance glanced toward the pre-war painting above the mantel. Did he paint this side? He painted both. Gabriel's gaze remained on the silhouette. Then he removed the scar. Without asking you, he said it would distress the household. Did it? The portrait did. His voice stayed controlled, but something underneath it had gone cold. It looked like a man who had not lived through Waterloo, a stranger wearing my name. What happened to it? I had it destroyed. Constance did not look shocked. Then it was not a portrait. Gabriel turned toward her. What was it? An apology made out of paint. The words seemed to strike him more deeply than praise would have done. He looked again at the silhouette. And this? Constance lifted it from the stand and offered it to him. This is what the light touched. He accepted it with both hands, careful not to bend the paper. You are certain the charity catalogue will not lose subscriptions because of it. Anyone frightened by a line of black paper was unlikely to be useful. This time, he smiled. The expression changed his face more than the scar ever could. It appeared quickly and vanished almost at once. But not before Constance saw how different he might have seemed if society had not taught him that every unguarded moment could be used against him. A footman entered with tea. Gabriel placed the silhouette on the mantel directly beneath the earlier portrait. He did not hide it in a drawer or turn it toward the wall. Lady Davenant joined them at the small tea table. As the cups were poured, Gabriel sat opposite Constance and glanced once toward the mantel. "Do you fear me?" The question came quietly enough for Lady Davenant to pretend not to hear. Constance considered him before answering. "I fear what people choose to do, not what they survived." His hand stilled beside his cup. "That is a dangerous distinction. Only to those who prefer appearances." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The distance between them had not changed, yet it felt less formal. No declaration had been made, no touch had passed. Still, something had shifted. Gabriel had allowed her to see the wound society insisted upon defining for him. Constance had refused to turn understanding into possession. Before the tea tray could be cleared, movement near the side door caught her attention. The committee secretary stood receiving a parcel from a stationer's boy. The package was wrapped in brown paper and tied with narrow cord. As the boy transferred it to a silver salver, one corner tore against the raised edge. Several cream sheets showed beneath the wrapping. Near the lower margin, a faint maker's mark appeared within the fibers. Morrow and Son, Fleet Street. Constance recognized the name because the same mark appeared on unused paper in her own portfolio. The secretary saw her looking. His hand moved too quickly. He folded the torn wrapper inward and tucked the parcel beneath his arm. Gabriel had turned to assist Lady Davenant with her shawl and did not see the mark, though he noticed Constance's attention fix upon the doorway. "Is something wrong?" he asked. Constance watched the secretary disappear through the side passage. "I do not know yet." Gabriel followed her gaze, but the man was already gone. Constance said nothing more. The name remained clear in her mind beside Sir Reuben's missing letter and Ursula's borrowed phrases. Respectable men rarely hid ordinary paper unless the words upon it were meant to matter. 4 days later, Constance saw the name Morrow and Son again, this time beside an unexplained payment in the Waterloo Widows' Subscription Committee accounts. The discovery came in Hyde Park beneath a clear July sky, while fashionable carriages moved in measured circles and half of London pretended not to observe the Duke of Rivenhall riding beside Lady Davenant's barouche. Gabriel kept his horse at the carriage's pace, close enough for conversation and far enough to preserve propriety. Constance sat opposite her aunt with the brass compass, secure inside her reticule, and the memory of the hidden parcel fixed in her mind. Gabriel had noticed her watching the committee secretary at Rivenhall House, but he had not seen the maker's mark. She had decided not to write of it. Paper was not proof. A hurried gesture was not guilt. Yet when the barouche passed beyond the thickest press of carriages, Gabriel looked directly at her and said, "You have been trying to tell me something since we entered the park." Constance raised her brows. "How could you know that?" "You have glanced at Lady Davenant 3 times to see whether she is listening." Lady Davenant adjusted her parasol. "I am always listening. Then I may speak without conspiracy," Constance said. Gabriel's expression warmed faintly. a disappointment, but continue. She described the stationer's boy, the torn wrapper, the cream paper beneath it, and the maker's name pressed into the fibers. Morrow and Son, Fleet Street, she finished. The committee secretary hid the mark as soon as he saw me looking. Gabriel's hand tightened slightly upon the reins. The parcel did not belong to my household. The committee sent it to Rivenhall House because the catalogue is being prepared under my patronage. Then the secretary handled it for Sir Reuben? He serves the committee, though Palliser appointed him. Gabriel reached inside his coat and removed a folded memorandum. He did not offer it to her, but unfolded it where both women could see. I began reviewing the accounts after the opera. And, Lady Davenant asked, 2 printing expenses lack full tradesmen's bills. One names Morrow and Son. The sums are larger than the quantities recorded. Constance looked at the neat figures. That is suspicious. Yes, it is not proof. His mouth tightened. No, and the missing letter does not, yet prove Sir Reuben intends to copy Owen's hand. No, you dislike agreeing with me. I dislike waiting while a man may be preparing harm. If you accuse him too soon, you will teach him which traces to hide. Gabriel looked ahead toward the line of elms. His silence was not resistance. It was calculation. You are asking me to be patient. I am asking you to let the facts arrive before your conclusion. That is worse. Why? Because it is sensible. Lady Davenant concealed a smile behind her parasol. Gabriel folded the memorandum. There is another fact. When the committee expanded its memorial work in the spring, I allowed my name to support its future printing credit. Palliser argued that widows should not wait while subscriptions were gathered. Without your endorsement, the printer may refuse further work, Constance said. Yes. Then Sir Reuben's respectability depends upon your name remaining attached. In part, and if the accounts conceal personal debt, Gabriel's gaze sharpened. He loses more than a chairmanship. He loses the appearance of solvency. Lady Davenant looked toward the passing trees. A desperate man often calls desperation duty. Constance thought of Sir Reuben's easy smile at supper and the exactness with which her place card had vanished. Then we watch, she said. We do not accuse. Gabriel gave her a long look. You are very loyal to fairness where Palliser is concerned. Not to him, to the truth. The barouche slowed near a crowded turning. An impatient phaeton approached too closely. On Lady Davenant's side, its driver more interested in being seen than in leaving room. Gabriel moved his horse between the vehicles without display. He absorbed the pressure of the road, guided the phaeton outward with a look, then returned to Constance's window as though nothing had happened. The act was so instinctive that he seemed unaware of it. Constance was not. You still carry the compass, he said. She touched the reticule at her wrist. Sometimes. Does it advise caution? No, it points north. The rest is my responsibility. Gabriel's eyes held hers. Owen would approve of that answer. The mention of her brother still hurt, but the pain no longer placed Gabriel outside it. There is a committee tea this afternoon, he continued. Palliser intends to announce a memorial supper. Lady Davenant looked at Constance. We shall attend. Gabriel's brows drew together. I was about to recommend caution. Then I have saved you the effort, Lady Davenant replied. His gaze returned to Constance. Are you certain? If Sir Reuben believes we are withdrawing, he will become careful. And if he sees you are not, he may become careless. Gabriel considered this, then inclined his head. Very well. If the room becomes hostile, I reserve the right to prevent physical injury. Only physical injury, Constance said. You negotiate like a diplomat. Diplomats are paid. That afternoon, Palliser House looked gentler than it had on the night of the ball. Sunlight filled the drawing room. Tea steamed from silver pots. Small tables displayed subscription lists, memorial engravings, and folded notices describing the charity's work. Respectability had replaced spectacle. Constance trusted the room less for it. Sir Reuben welcomed guests near the mantel, speaking of sacrifice with the polished gravity of a man who had never been required to surrender anything he valued. Ursula stood beside him in pale green muslin. When Constance entered with Lady Davenant, Ursula crossed the room at once. "Miss Davenant, I'm pleased you came." "Are you?" "Of course. I've regretted the misunderstanding at the opera." "Which part?" Ursula's smile did not falter. "The part where grief made us both less generous than we might have been." The offer was clear: accept shared blame, and Ursula's intrusion became mutual error. "My grief did not tell you when my brother was abandoned," Constance said. Ursula's fingers tightened around her teacup. Before she could answer, Sir Reuben called the room to attention. "Friends, patrons, and ladies of the committee, I am honored to announce that 1 week from today, Palliser House will host a memorial supper. Letters from fallen officers will be read for the benefit of subscribers and the families we serve." Lady Davenant went still beside Constance. Across the room, Gabriel's attention sharpened. Sir Reuben continued. "Only papers properly entrusted to the committee will be used. No family need fear a breach of confidence." The assurance came too quickly. Conversation resumed after the announcement, quieter than before. Mrs. Lane approached Constance near a table of memorial engravings. She was one of the women who had stepped back from Gabriel at the ball. Today her confidence looked worn thin by guilt. "Miss Davenant, may I speak with you?" "Of course." Mrs. Lane glanced toward Ursula. "Not here." Before they could move, Ursula appeared beside them. "Mrs. Lane, my father was asking whether you completed the revised relief list." Mrs. Lane paled. "Nearly." Nearly is a dangerous word when names may need to be removed. The threat was wrapped in administrative concern. Constance saw Mrs. Lane's hand begin to tremble. She also saw several guests close enough to hear. To expose Ursula now would expose Mrs. Lane with her. "Mrs. Lane was telling me about the widow's sewing circle," Constance said. "Lady Davenant has 2 trunks of linen to send." Lady Davenant joined them without hesitation. "Indeed, I have been looking for a reliable destination." Ursula looked from one woman to the other. How charitable. "It is the purpose of the committee," Constance said. Ursula held her gaze, then moved away. Mrs. Lane released a breath. "You didn't have to protect me." "I did not protect what you did. I protected you from being punished before you could speak." Mrs. Lane looked toward the doors. At the ball, Miss Palliser wrote instructions on her dance card. She showed them to several of us. "What instructions?" "All step back, then I advance." Cold settled beneath Constance's ribs. "Where is the card?" "I have it." "Why?" "It fell near my chair after the quadrille. I picked it up before a servant could." Mrs. Lane pressed her lips together. "I could not destroy it. I was too ashamed. Who else saw the words? 5 women. Perhaps 6. Will they admit it? Not while Sir Reuben controls the relief list. My husband's sister depends upon the fund." Constance did not offer pity. Pity given too quickly could become another humiliation. "Keep the card exactly as it is. Do not fold it again. Do not burn it. Do not give it to anyone yet." Mrs. Lane nodded. "Will you make me speak publicly?" "Not until you choose to. But if this becomes larger, silence may protect the wrong person." Mrs. Lane lowered her eyes. "I know." Across the room, Sir Reuben stood in low conversation with the committee secretary. Constance moved nearer under the pretense of examining a framed list. She heard only the final sentence. The supper must happen before Rivenhall asks the wrong question. Gabriel appeared beside her without touching her arm. His presence alone made the secretary step back. Sir Reuben smiled. "Your Grace, Palliser." The men regarded one another with perfect civility. Mrs. Lane moved toward the entrance. Sir Reuben's gaze followed her. Gabriel noticed and signalled to a Rivenhall footman waiting in the hall. "See Mrs. Lane safely to her carriage." The order was quiet and required no explanation. The footman bowed and went. Gabriel looked at Constance. "What did she tell you?" "Not here." His eyes moved once toward Sir Reuben. "Agreed." That evening, when Constance and Lady Davenant returned home, an invitation waited upon the hall table. Heavy cream paper, Palliser seal. Memorial supper, 1 week hence. Tucked beneath it lay a smaller sheet without a signature. 4 words stood alone across the centre. "Bring your brother's letter." The memorial supper began on the 22nd of July beneath candlelight, polished silver, and the solemn expressions of people who had come to honour the dead while secretly hoping the evening would ruin someone living. Palliser House had been arranged like a place of judgment. Veterans, widows, committee patrons, and members of society faced a raised table near the mantel. Sir Reuben occupied the central chair. Ursula sat at his right in pale grey silk, a colour chosen to suggest mourning without requiring sacrifice. Gabriel stood near the windows with 2 former officers, his scar visible beneath the chandeliers. He had spoken little since Constance arrived with Lady Davenant, but his gaze found her at once and remained aware of her even when others claimed his attention. The unsigned note had ordered her to bring Owen's letter. She had not. The authentic letter remained locked inside the escritoire at Davenant House. The brass compass rested inside her reticule. She had brought grief into Palliser House. She had not brought proof into the hands of the man she suspected of stealing it. Sir Reuben rose after the second course and lifted one hand. Conversation faded. "We are gathered," he said, "not merely to praise sacrifice, but to honour truth. The dead cannot correct the stories told in their names. That duty belongs to those who remain." Constance felt Lady Davenant's fingers tighten around her fan. Across the room, Gabriel turned fully towards Sir Reuben. "While preparing this memorial," Sir Reuben continued, "the committee recovered a letter believed lost among the papers of Captain Owen Davenant. The room did not move, yet every attention shifted toward Constance. Sir Reuben reached for a folded sheet beside his wineglass. Cream paper, broken seal, several closely written pages. It bears the date 20th June, 1815, 2 days after Waterloo and 1 day before Captain Davenant's death. Lady Davenant whispered he wrote no second letter. Constance did not answer. She watched Ursula. The young woman's face held the serenity of someone awaiting a result already rehearsed. Sir Reuben unfolded the page. Captain Davenant wrote that retreat had been ordered while he remained wounded and unable to follow. He wrote that an officer chose safety before duty. A murmur passed through the room. Gabriel did not move. Sir Reuben looked directly at him. He named Gabriel Trelawney, Duke of Rivenhall. Silence followed. It was deeper than the silence of the ballroom, because this cruelty had been dressed as evidence. Sir Reuben began to read. The supposed letter claimed Gabriel had chosen retreat, left Owen behind, and returned only after danger had passed. It described Gabriel's scar not as the mark of rescue, but as an injury received while withdrawing. Constance knew Owen's voice. The hand might have imitated him. The sentences did not. Her brother never arranged blame so neatly. Then Sir Reuben read the final passage. His Grace has promised to provide for my family if I kept silence regarding his conduct. I do not know whether honor can be purchased, but I fear poverty may force others to test the price. The accusation struck the room with calculated force. It remained possible within the stated date. Owen could have written of a promise made before his death. Sir Reuben folded the sheet halfway and looked toward Constance. We cannot know whether that promise was later fulfilled. We can only observe that Miss Davenant concealed another letter, then crossed a ballroom to the man accused by this one. Ursula rose slowly. Miss Davenant, she said, her voice softened by counterfeit pity. Perhaps you should answer before society answers for you. Constance looked at her. Answer what? Why you approached his Grace. Was it affection? Gratitude? Or compensation? Several women lowered their eyes. One gentleman who had spoken kindly to Constance at the opera drew his chair back by an inch. The movement was small. It hurt more than open insult. Constance remained seated. She would not allow them to make standing look like panic. May I examine the letter? She asked. Sir Reuben hesitated. This is a delicate document. It bears my brother's name, and for that reason it should not be passed about a dining room. You did not consider the dining room unsuitable when you read it aloud. A murmur moved among the tables. Ursula's expression tightened. Constance rose. My brother did not write in that manner. He did not use poverty as a threat against his own family, and he did not arrange accusations like lines in a sermon. Let me see the paper. Sir Reuben held it slightly higher, but did not extend it. Grief may make the hand appear unfamiliar. Then you should welcome examination. Gabriel crossed the room before Sir Reuben could answer. He did not place himself in front of Constance. He stopped beside her. No more will be read, he said. Sir Reuben's gaze hardened. Your Grace, the committee has a duty to disclose. The committee has a duty not to damage what it claims to preserve. Gabriel looked toward a silver-haired gentleman seated near the end of the table. Mr. Hallam, the solicitor rose. Your Grace, will you hold this letter under seal until its paper, date, and hand can be considered before witnesses? Sir Reuben spoke at once. It belongs to the committee. Then the committee should prefer a solicitor's custody to a supper table. Gabriel's voice remained quiet. Unless you fear what the paper may reveal. The accusation was exact. Sir Reuben could refuse only by making suspicion larger. I fear nothing, he said. Hallam approached with a leather case, clean paper, and sealing wax. Sir Reuben folded the letter and surrendered it before the room. As the sheet passed beneath the nearest candle, the paper became briefly translucent. Constance saw pale figures pressed within the fibers near the lower edge. 1, 8, 1, 6. The glimpse lasted less than a heartbeat. Her pulse changed. Owen was supposed to have written the letter in June 1815. She could not prove what she had seen. She could not forget it. Hallam placed the letter inside a paper packet, closed it, and asked both Sir Reuben and Gabriel to impress their seals across the fastening. The Palliser crest and Rivenhall signet fixed the packet shut. Hallam locked it inside the leather case. The letter no longer belonged to the performance. Ursula turned toward Gabriel. You are protecting her again. I am protecting the document from your father's use of it. And the promised provision? She asked. Will you deny that? Gabriel faced the room. I have never paid Miss Davenant, Lady Davenant, or any member of their household. I have never settled a debt for them, offered them property, or purchased their silence. No such arrangement exists. His gaze found Constance. Any claim otherwise is false. Sir Reuben folded his arms. Then perhaps Miss Davenant will explain why she kept a different letter from the committee. The room turned toward her again. Gabriel already knew the authentic letter existed and had read it. The public had not. I preserved it, Constance said. I did not conceal it. You refuse to submit it. Because it names living men and was written to me, not to your committee. Does it praise his grace? Ursula asked. Constance met her eyes. Yes, the admission struck harder than evasion. How convenient, Ursula said. One letter condemns him and appears publicly. Another praises him and remains locked in your desk. Gabriel looked sharply at Constance. She saw the hurt before he mastered it. Not because he doubted the authentic letter, because he had not known of the threat, demanding she bring it. Sir Reuben's attention sharpened. You have the original still? Yes. Here? No. Why not? Because the unsigned note tucked beneath your invitation ordered me to bring it. Several guests turned toward Sir Reuben. Ursula's lips parted. Sir Reuben recovered first. I know nothing of such a note. Then someone in your house used your invitation to make a demand. Gabriel's voice dropped. You received a note. Constance looked at him. Yes. Why didn't you tell me? The question was quiet. It hurt because anger would have been easier to resist. Because I did not know whether the note was meant to frighten me, tempt you into acting, or discover where the letter was kept. You should have told me. Perhaps. The single word did not mend what had opened between them. Hallam carried the sealed case from the room under the eyes of the witnesses. Gabriel offered Lady Davenant his arm. Constance walked beside them through whispers that no longer knew which scandal to believe. In the entrance hall, while servants brought cloaks, Gabriel stood close enough to speak without being overheard. Until the person who forged that letter is identified, you must remain away from Rivenhall House. Constance looked at him. Must? His expression tightened. I am trying to keep you beyond the reach of whoever sent that note. By deciding where I may go, by removing one point of access, without asking whether I consent. For one moment, the commander in him and the man who had asked permission before touching the compass seemed to struggle behind the same face. Fear won. Please remain away, he said, but the request came after the decision. Lady Davenant's carriage drew up beneath the portico. Gabriel handed Constance inside without touching more than her gloved fingers. The forged letter was secure beneath Hallam's seal. Owen's authentic letter remained locked at Davenant House. The brass compass was still hers. Yet as the carriage pulled away, Constance understood that truth was not the only thing endangered. Gabriel had promised not to speak for her grief. Now, in the name of protection, he had begun to speak for her life. By noon the next day, Gabriel had already broken the distance he had imposed. A Rivenhall carriage arrived at Davenant House with a formal note requesting one final conference. And Lady Davenant accepted only, after adding in her own hand that she would remain present from beginning to end. Constance entered the Duke's study an hour later, with Owen's authentic letter still locked inside the escritoire at home, the brass compass secure in her reticule, and the memory of the memorial supper pressing against every breath. The disputed letter remained under Mr. Hallam's seal. Nothing important had changed hands, yet when Gabriel stood behind his broad mahogany desk, surrounded by maps, committee accounts, and unopened correspondence, Constance saw at once that he had arranged more than a conversation. The scar along the left side of his face looked sharper in daylight because exhaustion had drained colour from the rest of him. Lady Davenant took a chair near the windows and opened her fan with the calm authority of a woman announcing that propriety would be maintained, even if reason failed. Constance remained standing. Gabriel looked at her for one long moment. "I owe you an explanation. You owe me several." His gaze did not leave hers. "That is fair." He moved a folded memorandum aside. "Palliser's accusation has changed the danger. Until last night, society was discussing my judgment and your ambition. Now it is discussing fraud, payment, and the conduct of a dead officer. Whoever sent the note knows you possess the authentic letter. They knew that before I left the supper. Yes, then asking me to avoid your house does not alter what they know. It removes one place where they might expect to find you." Constance heard the careful logic. She also heard the decision beneath it. "And where do you expect me to be?" Gabriel drew one breath. "There is a cottage on the Elmstead property in Surrey. It stands apart from the main house. It is comfortable, properly staffed, and difficult to approach without notice." Lady Davenant lowered her fan. "You have arranged this already?" "I have made it available." "That was not her question," Constance said. Gabriel's attention returned to her. "A carriage can be ready tomorrow morning." The answer settled between them. He had chosen the road, the destination, the servants, and the hour before asking whether she wished to leave London. "You call it available," she said. "It sounds remarkably complete." Preparation is not compulsion. It becomes compulsion when every other choice is described as reckless. Gabriel came around the desk, but stopped several feet away. "Constance, the broadsheets will print before evening. Palliser's allies are already saying you concealed evidence and accepted money. Your house is watched. Your servants can be questioned. Tradesmen can be bribed. A determined man does not require permission to become dangerous." It was the first time he had used her given name, and the intimacy of it made the command hidden inside his concern more painful. "Then ask me what I intend to do." His expression tightened. "What do you intend to do? Remain in my own home. Examine what I saw in the forged letter. Learn when that paper was made. Speak with Mrs. Lane before Sir Reuben frightens her into silence. Decide which risks belong to me. The risks no longer belong only to you, nor do they belong only to you. Your name is now attached to mine. My name existed before you noticed it." The words landed harder than she had meant them to, but she did not withdraw them. Gabriel went still. For a moment, the room held only the faint movement of Lady Davenant's fan. "I know that," he said. "Do you?" Constance asked. "At the ball, you defended my place. Last night, you defended the letter. Today, you speak as though my safety is another matter to be entered in your accounts. That is not what I am doing. You have chosen a cottage, servants, a carriage, and a departure hour. Because delay creates vulnerability. For whom?" He looked at her. "For you." "No, for whom, Your Grace?" Silence answered before he did. Constance saw the truth reach him, though he resisted it. The cottage would make her difficult for Sir Reuben to reach. It would also place her on Gabriel's land, among Gabriel's servants, beyond the evidence she had begun to understand. It would remove her from danger by removing her from choice. "You believe distance will make this cleaner," she said. "I believe distance will make you safer. Safe for the part of you that cannot bear to watch danger without controlling the person inside it." His jaw set. Lady Davenant did not intervene. Gabriel looked toward the maps on his desk then back at Constance. I have buried men because I waited too long, and now you would bury my judgment before anything can happen to it. The sentence was not cruel. That made it final. He lowered his voice. I do not understand why you kept Owen's letter from Hallam after we knew another had gone missing, because it was my brother's last private letter to me. It may be the strongest proof we possess. Proof is not the only thing a letter can be. If Hallam had held it under seal, Palliser could not imply that you altered or concealed it. Constance felt the pain beneath his reasoning. He did not believe Sir Reuben. He did not believe the forged letter, yet he trusted arrangements more quickly than he trusted her. Do you trust me? She asked. Gabriel answered too slowly. I trust what you did in the ballroom. That was not my question. I trust that you believe the letter should remain with you. That is not the same as trusting my judgment. No, he said at last, it is not. Constance reached inside her reticule and closed her fingers around the compass without removing it. The dented brass pressed into her palm. You want me to surrender my choices until the facts make you comfortable. I want you alive and beyond Palliser's reach. And I want to remain the person whose life you claim to value. Gabriel's face changed, not anger, recognition sharpened by fear. What would you have me do? Ask before arranging my future. I am asking now. After the carriage has been ordered, he looked away. Lady Davenant folded her fan. Your Grace, a gilded cage does not become a drawing room because the curtains are costly. Gabriel accepted the rebuke without turning toward her. Constance crossed to the desk and placed the unused invitation to the next Rivenhall committee meeting upon it. I will not enter your house again while you regard me as a danger to be managed. His gaze dropped to the card, then to her reticule. The compass is mine. I was not asking for it. Good. She turned toward Lady Davenant. Gabriel spoke before they reached the door. The cottage remains available. Constance faced him. I do not want your cottage, your carriage, or your money. Hurt crossed his expression at the last word. I have never offered you money. Then do not begin by offering me dependence. His shoulders lowered by a fraction. Very well. He escorted them to the entrance hall, but did not offer Constance his hand when she entered the carriage. The absence felt deliberate. So did her refusal to look back. By the time they returned to Davenant House, a folded broadsheet had been pushed beneath the front door. The footman bent to remove it, but the black headline had already caught Constance's eye. The purchased partner. Lady Davenant read 3 lines and let the paper fall onto the hall table. It will line the kitchen grate. Not yet, Constance said. She carried it into the drawing room and placed it beside the unsigned note from Palliser House. The broadsheet named no one in its first paragraph. It did not need to. A woman of reduced circumstances had used a dead brother's memory to secure the attention of a guilty duke. A scarred man had mistaken pity for devotion. A family's silence had been purchased. Constance read until the words blurred, then stopped. Her hands looked steady. Only when she removed her gloves did she see the crescent marks her nails had pressed into both palms. Lady Davenant noticed and said nothing. Constance went to the locked escritoire. Owen's letter remained inside, intact and untouched. She did not remove it. Instead, she took out one unused sheet from the portfolio she had used for Gabriel's silhouette and carried it to the window. When she lifted it toward the light, the maker's name appeared faintly within the fibers. Morrow and Son. Near it, pressed more lightly, stood the year, 1816. Constance remembered the disputed letter passing beneath the candle at Palliser House. The same pale figures had appeared near its lower edge. 1, 8, 1, 6. Owen was supposed to have written that letter in June of 1815. She placed the silhouette sheet beside the broadsheet and took a pencil from the desk. On a clean card, she wrote 2 dates. June 1815, paper marked 1816. Lady Davenant came to stand beside her. "Can you prove what you saw?" "Not yet." "What will you do?" Constance touched the reticule at her wrist. The compass gave no counsel. Its needle offered direction, not permission. "I shall go tomorrow and son," she said, "and I shall not wait for the Duke to decide that I may." On the morning of the 25th of July, Constance entered Morrow and Son on Fleet Street with Lady Davenant, a maid, and the distinct sensation that someone had expected her not to come. The stationer's shop was narrow, orderly, and warm with the dry scent of paper. Ledgers filled the shelves behind the counter. Reams of cream and white sheets stood beneath weights to keep their edges straight. Mr. Morrow, a spare man with silver spectacles, listened without interruption while Constance explained that a letter dated June 1815 appeared to have been written upon paper bearing his firm's watermark for 1816. She did not name Gabriel or repeat the accusations. She gave only the facts necessary to ask a question. "Can you tell me when that mark was first used?" Mr. Morrow's expression changed. "May I ask where you saw the sheet?" "It is held under seal by a solicitor." "Then I should prefer to answer from my books." He glanced toward the window. A dark-coated man stood across the street near a Rivenhall carriage, though no carriage had brought Constance there. The footman did not enter the shop. He did not look toward the counter. His attention remained upon the traffic and the men passing the door. Constance recognized the livery. Gabriel had heard her say where she intended to go, and he had chosen protection that did not enter the room ahead of her. She felt the distinction. She did not mistake it for an apology. Mr. Morrow brought down a heavy ledger and placed it upon the counter. "The mold was cut in January of this year," he said. "The first sheets were offered for sale in February." Constance's pulse quickened. So no paper bearing that mark existed in June of 1815. "Not from this house." He turned several pages, running one finger down the entries. "We record larger orders by purchaser and delivery." He stopped. Lady Davenant leaned closer. The entry was dated 19th February 1816. A full ream had been purchased by Mr. C. Webb for the Waterloo Widows' Subscription Committee and delivered to Palliser House. Constance read the line twice. "Who is Mr. Webb?" Mr. Morrow adjusted his spectacles. "The committee secretary, or he was when the order was placed." "May we take the ledger to Mr. Hallam?" Constance asked. Mr. Morrow closed one hand over the page. "The original does not leave this shop. I would not ask you to surrender it." His guarded expression eased slightly. "I can prepare an attested copy and send it directly to the solicitor." "Please do." "There is another matter." He lowered his voice. "A gentleman called yesterday and suggested this entry had been made in error." "Did he give his name?" "No," he said. "The delivery had gone to another house, and that correcting the record would spare embarrassment." "Did you correct it?" Lady Davenant asked. Mr. Morrow looked offended. "My lady, paper may be altered. A ledger should not be." Constance thanked him and gave Hallam's direction. When they stepped outside, the Rivenhall footman moved only enough to keep the pavement clear before them. He did not approach. Lady Davenant looked across the street at him. "His Grace has discovered restraint. He has discovered distance," Constance replied. "They are not always the same thing." Yet, as they entered their hired carriage, She saw the footman remain where he was until they had safely turned from Fleet Street. By the time Constance returned to Davenant House, the first physical proof no longer depended upon memory. The original ledger remained at Morrow and Son. An attested copy would go to Hallam. The forged letter remained under seal. Owen's authentic letter remained locked in the escritoire. Nothing had been disturbed. Mrs. Lane arrived before luncheon was cleared. She wore the same modest brown bonnet. Constance remembered from the committee tea, but her hands were steadier. Lady Davenant received her in the drawing-room and kept the maid within call. Mrs. Lane did not sit until invited. "I brought the card," she said. From a flat portfolio beneath her cloak, she withdrew a lilac dance card. It had not been folded again. Ursula's hand appeared across the inner surface in dark pencil. All step back, then I advance. Constance did not touch it immediately. Has anyone else handled this since the ball? Only me. Did anyone see you pick it up? I don't think so. Do you know who saw Miss Palliser write these words? 5 women, certainly. A 6th may have. Will they speak? Mrs. Lane looked down. Not while Sir Reuben controls whether their relations remain on the relief lists. Constance took a clean sheet and wrote the date, the hour, the place, and Mrs. Lane's name. She recorded that the card had passed directly from Mrs. Lane into her hands. Then she laid the card inside another sheet without marking its surface and sealed the fold with Lady Davenant's wax. "This will go to Mr. Hallam," she said. "You understand that you may be asked to identify it publicly." Mrs. Lane swallowed. "Yes. You may also be asked why you obeyed. I was afraid for my husband's sister." "Fear explains the choice," Constance said. "It does not erase it." Mrs. Lane raised her eyes. "I know." The absence of easy forgiveness seemed to steady her more than comfort would have done. "There is something else, Mr. Webb has left the committee." Constance's hand paused over the sealed packet. "How do you know?" "He is staying with my cousin in Bloomsbury. She lets 2 rooms to clerks. He arrived frightened and without most of his things." "Did he speak to you?" "No. My cousin wrote to me. She said he keeps asking whether anyone from Palliser House has called. He told her he has a page Sir Reuben believes was destroyed." Constance felt the mystery narrow. "Does your cousin know what is on it?" "No. Only that, Mr. Webb said it proves he did not devise the wording alone." Why would he tell a landlady that? He had been drinking. The next morning, he begged her to forget it. Mrs. Lane gave Constance a slip of paper. "This is the address. I thought you should have it before Sir Reuben learns where he is." Constance accepted it. Mrs. Lane had brought a path, not a completed answer. Webb still possessed the page. Its contents remained unknown. That preserved both the danger and the truth. After Mrs. Lane left, Constance wrote 2 notes. The first went to Hallam with Webb's Bloomsbury address. A request that he reach the man before Palliser did, and notice that an attested copy from Morrow and Son was on its way. The second went to Gabriel. She wrote only 1 sentence. "Come when you are prepared to hear my plan rather than give me yours." Lady Davenant read it and raised one brow. Direct. So was the carriage to Surrey. The notes left Davenant House within the hour. No answer came that afternoon. On the 26th, Hallam sent word that he had received both the address and the stationer's copy, but he offered no details in writing. Constance waited through a night made longer by restraint. On the morning of the 27th, a Rivenhall carriage stopped outside Davenant House. Gabriel entered the drawing-room alone, leaving Hallam in the hall until Lady Davenant should permit him to join them. He looked tired, composed, and stripped of every argument he had carried into their last meeting. He did not glance toward the escritoire. He did not ask whether she had obeyed his warning. He stopped at the proper distance and met Constance's eyes. "I came to listen." "I came to listen," Gabriel said, and this time Constance believed he understood the cost of the words. Lady Davenant remained in the drawing room, seated near the windows, with her fan closed across her lap. Gabriel stood several feet from Constance and did not attempt to shorten the distance. The scar along the left side of his face looked pale in the morning light. He had slept little, so had she, yet neither of them allowed exhaustion to decide the conversation. "Mr. Hallam may come in," Constance said. Gabriel inclined his head toward the door. The solicitor entered carrying a dark deed box and an attested sheet folded beneath ribbon. Behind him waited another gentleman whom Constance did not recognize. "Mr. Hallam," Lady Davenant said, "you may proceed." Hallam placed the box upon the table. The disputed letter remains sealed beneath the Palliser and Rivenhall impressions. Neither fastening has been disturbed. He laid the folded sheet beside it. "This is the attested copy sent by Morrow and Son. The original ledger remains at their shop." Constance looked first at Gabriel, then at Hallam. "Before we discuss any theory, there are 3 facts." Gabriel did not interrupt. The letter read at Palliser House is dated 20th June 1815. The paper bears a mark created in January 1816 and first sold the following month. Mr. Webb purchased a full ream of that paper for the committee on the 19th of February, and it was delivered to Palliser House. Hallam nodded. The stationer's copy confirms each point. Gabriel's gaze moved toward the deed box. "Then the document cannot be what Palliser claimed." "No," Constance said. "But impossible paper does not yet identify the person who dictated the lie." She took the sealed fold containing Ursula's lilac dance card from the escritoire drawer where she had placed it after Mrs. Lane's visit. Owen's authentic letter remained in the locked compartment beneath. Constance gave the dance card packet to Hallam. "Mrs. Lane placed the card directly in my hands on the 25th. I wrote the date, hour, place, and her name before sealing it." Hallam examined the wax without opening it. "I shall place it with the other papers." Constance looked toward the escritoire. Her hand rested briefly upon the key at her waist. Gabriel saw the hesitation and remained silent. That silence made the choice hers. She unlocked the desk and removed Owen's authentic letter. The folds were worn from memory, not tampering. She held it against her palm for one moment before carrying it to Hallam. "This letter is dated 19th June 1815. It was written to me. You may hold it in a separate packet until the meeting, and it must be returned afterward." "Agreed," Hallam said. "Only the passages necessary to establish the truth will be read." Gabriel did not ask to see it again. He watched Constance surrender it with an expression that held no triumph. He understood that evidence could still be grief. Hallam prepared a clean paper packet, and Constance placed the letter inside herself. Lady Davenant and Gabriel witnessed the sealing. The solicitor then turned toward the gentleman waiting near the door. "Miss Davenant, this is Mr. Arden, solicitor to Mr. Webb." Mr. Arden bowed. "My client has consented to speak in Lady Davenant's presence." A thin man entered behind him. Constance recognized the committee secretary from Rivenhall House. Mr. Webb looked older than he had beside the hidden parcel. His coat was brushed, but badly fitted, as though borrowed. He kept both hands around a narrow account book. Gabriel's expression hardened, yet he did not question him. Hallam spoke instead. My clerk found Mr. Webb yesterday at the Bloomsbury address provided in your note. Mr. Webb chose Mr. Arden to advise him. Lodgings have been secured through his solicitor, not through his grace, Constance asked. No, Mr. Arden said. My client is not dependent upon the Duke's favour or upon the substance of his statement. Webb looked toward Gabriel, then quickly away. I made the copy, he said. The admission was so abrupt that Lady Davenant's fan opened once and closed again. Hallam raised a hand. You will answer in your own time, Mr. Webb. There isn't a better time. Webb set the account book upon the table. Sir Reuben gave me a letter in Captain Davenant's hand. 4 pages from Belgium. He told me to imitate the capitals first, then the lower case. I thought it was for the memorial catalogue. Constance heard the lie inside the excuse. Webb heard it too. His face tightened. Later, he dictated the accusation. I knew then, and continued, Constance said. Yes. She did not soften the word by offering sympathy. Why? I owed money. Sir Reuben knew it. He said he would tell every house in London I had stolen from the committee if I refused. Had you? Hallam asked. No, I had borrowed from one account and restored it before the quarter closed. Without authority, Mr. Arden said quietly. Webb lowered his head. Yes. He opened the account book and removed a single sheet that had been pressed between 2 leaves. The page showed rows of handwriting, each line attempting Owen's hand. Beside several letters appeared corrections in a darker ink. A capital R had been altered twice. The phrase kept silence regarding his conduct appeared in 3 forms, each narrowed by notes at the margin. Initials stood beneath the final correction. R.P. Sir Reuben believed every practice sheet had been burned. Webb said, This one slipped into the account book. I found it after I left Palliser House. Why keep it? Constance asked. Because I knew he would say the wording was mine. His voice shook, though his hands had become still. It proves it wasn't mine alone. It also proves your part, she said. I know. Mr. Arden handed the page to Hallam, who placed it inside a separate fold and marked the transfer. No one spoke of absolution. Webb had supplied the hand. Sir Reuben had supplied the design. Both truths could stand together. Gabriel looked at the corrected phrase, then at Constance. Palliser used Owen's letter to shape a weapon against you. Against both of us, she said, but he expected you to answer with power before I could answer with proof. Hallam closed the deed box. There is enough to demand a meeting of the subscribers and trustees, not enough to predict how Palliser will behave when cornered. He will attack the witness, Constance said. Webb flinched. Then the paper must speak before he does, Hallam replied. He and Mr. Arden escorted Webb from the room. Lady Davenant rose. I shall be in the adjoining drawing room. The door will remain open. She looked at Gabriel. Do not waste the opportunity by explaining yourself too beautifully. When she had gone, Constance moved toward the conservatory doors. Gabriel followed only after she looked back and gave the smallest nod. Morning light fell through the glass upon lemon trees and pale stone. They stopped where Lady Davenant could still see them from the next room. I decided where you should go before I asked what you wanted, Gabriel said. There was no polished beginning. I arranged the carriage, the servants, and the cottage. Then I called it protection. Constance waited. His jaw tightened. It was not. What was it? Fear with authority behind it. The answer cost him. She could see that. He did not use Waterloo to excuse himself. He did not describe the men he had lost, or the choices that still woke him in darkness. I believed that if I controlled the road, the house, and the distance, I could prevent harm, he continued. I did not consider what it would cost you to be made safe inside someone else's decision." Constance looked toward the glass roof. "You trusted arrangements before you trusted me." "Yes, and now?" "Now I know the evidence exists, because you acted when I told you to withdraw." His voice lowered. "That does not earn back what I damaged." "No." He accepted the answer without flinching. "Tell me what must happen next." Constance turned to face him fully. "I will be in the room when Sir Reuben is confronted." "Yes." "I will ask the first question." "Yes." "You will not answer for me, explain my grief, or use your title to make my proof seem true." Gabriel's eyes held hers. "When may I use it?" "Only if they try to remove me before the papers are heard." "Then that is all I will do." He lifted one hand, stopped before reaching hers, and let it fall. Constance saw the restraint. After a moment, she placed her hand on the stone ledge beside his, close enough for warmth, but not forgiveness. Hallam reappeared at the conservatory door. "Sir Reuben has moved the meeting forward. The subscribers and trustees are summoned for the 1st of August. Gabriel looked at Constance rather than at the solicitor. "Will that be enough time?" She thought of the sealed letters, the stationer's copy, the lilac card, the practice page, and the man who believed status could outlast truth. "It will have to be." On the evening of the 30th of July, Constance entered Rivenhall House for the first time since refusing Gabriel's carriage to Surrey, and the quiet of the entrance hall felt more dangerous than the noise of Palliser House had ever done. No servants lingered near the drawing-room doors. No committee patron waited to observe her arrival. Gabriel had reduced the household to what propriety required, and nothing more. Lady Davenant walked beside Constance. Mr. Hallam followed with the locked deed box that now held the sealed forged letter, Owen's authentic letter in its separate packet, the lilac dance card, the attested copy from Morrow and Son, and Mr. Webb's practice page. The original stationer's ledger remained on Fleet Street. Gabriel did not greet Constance upon the stairs or reach for her cloak. He waited inside the drawing-room with the chairman of the subscribers' meeting and the gentleman who had hired the Hanover Square rooms for the 1st of August. His scar remained visible. His expression gave nothing away until Constance entered. Then his attention settled upon her with the same intensity it had carried across the ballroom, though he did not step forward. "Miss Davenant," he said. "Lady Davenant." "Your Grace," Constance replied. The formality hurt less than the alternative might have done. They had not repaired enough to pretend ease. Hallam placed the deed box upon a narrow table and kept the key. "We need only agree upon order," he said. "If we attempt to anticipate every accusation, Sir Reuben will control the evening by making us answer him." Constance looked toward the chairman. "Will I be permitted to speak before the letter is read again?" The older gentleman folded his hands over the head of his cane. "You are Captain Davenant's sister. The letter was presented in his name. You may question its authenticity." The host of the rooms added, "No one will be removed while the sealed papers are under consideration." His glance moved briefly toward Gabriel. "I have given my word. And if courage alters when Palliser arrives with half his patrons?" Lady Davenant asked. The host flushed. Gabriel spoke before the man could defend himself. "Then I shall use my title once, and only once, to keep Miss Davenant in the room until the papers are heard." He looked at Constance rather than at the host. No further. Constance inclined her head. It was exactly what she had required. Hallam opened a memorandum. 3 decisions. No more. First, Miss Davenant asks about the watermark before anyone discusses handwriting or motive. Second, Mr. Morrow establishes the date before Mr. Webb appears. Third, the dance card is not shown until the forgery has failed. It proves a pattern of coercion, not the letter itself. And Owen's authentic letter? Constance asked. Only the necessary lines, Hallam said. Nothing concerning men whose names need not be exposed. Gabriel's gaze moved to the deed box and away again. He did not ask to hear the letter once more. The restraint mattered. Sir Reuben will say the disputed letter is a later copy, Gabriel said. Then I shall ask why he presented it as original, Constance replied. He described its folds, its hand, and its date before witnesses. He will attack Webb. Then the paper must speak before Webb does. Hallam nodded. Precisely. And Ursula? Lady Davenant asked. She will claim the women at the ball acted freely. Constance answered. Mrs. Lane must admit her own choice before she describes the threat. If she excuses herself, Ursula will dismiss everything as guilt. Gabriel watched Constance as she spoke. He did not interrupt, improve, or claim the strategy. That, too, mattered. A servant entered carrying a small silver tray. Upon it lay a folded note. Delivered by hand, Your Grace. Gabriel glanced at the outer fold, then passed it to Constance without opening it. Ursula's name was written across the front. Constance broke the wafer. The message contained only 2 lines. If you appear on the 1st of August, my father will read Owen's final confession before every subscriber in London. Once spoken, no duke will be able to purchase your reputation back. Lady Davenant read over Constance's shoulder. She mistakes repetition for proof. She knows fear does not require proof, Constance said. Gabriel's hand tightened at his side. You need not answer. Constance went to the writing desk. Yes, I do. She took a clean card and wrote 1 sentence. I shall be there. She sanded the ink, folded the card, and gave it to the servant. Return this to Miss Palliser. When the door closed, the room seemed to draw breath. The chairman rose first. Then we are prepared. Hallam locked his memorandum inside the deed box, as prepared as facts allow. Lady Davenant departed with the 2 gentlemen to discuss the hour of arrival, leaving the drawing-room doors open. Constance expected Gabriel to speak. He did not. Instead, he crossed to the portrait gallery and stopped beneath the pre-war painting. The silhouette Constance had made still rested upon the mantel below it. Gabriel did not touch the larger portrait. He lifted the small black profile, held it for a moment, then placed it back exactly where it had been. Constance remained near the doorway. Lady Davenant was visible in the adjoining room, speaking with Hallam. Propriety held, so did distance. You kept it there, Constance said. Gabriel looked at the silhouette. It is the first likeness of me I have believed. Because it includes the scar, because it did not ask me to apologize for surviving. The words reached her, but she did not allow them to decide what came next. Gabriel turned toward her. I have been trying to find an honorable way to ask something that may itself be dishonorable. Then ask plainly. He crossed half the distance between them and stopped. Marry me. The proposal came without kneeling, ornament, or witness. Its simplicity made it more dangerous. Constance's breath caught, despite every warning she had given herself. Gabriel continued before she could answer. An engagement announced tomorrow would end the ugliest part of the rumor. It would make clear that no payment exists, that you are not concealed, and that I place my name beside yours. Before the meeting? Yes. Before the proof is heard? Yes. She looked at him and saw that he believed this offer differed from the Surrey cottage. In tenderness, it did. In structure, it did not. Once again, he was offering safety by placing her inside an arrangement already powerful enough to silence opposition. Then society would believe you, she said. It would believe us. No, it would believe your title. Gabriel went still. Does the distinction matter if it protects you? It matters because my brother's truth should not require me to become a duchess before anyone listens. The word remained between them, too large for a woman who had not yet accepted anything. Gabriel's expression tightened. I am not offering you rank as payment. I know, or property. I know that too. Then why does this feel like another accusation? Because you are asking from fear again. Hurt crossed his face. Constance did not look away. Not fear of Sir Reuben, she said. Fear that the room may wound me before you can stop it. It will, probably. And you would still refuse protection? I refuse. Protection that changes the question. Gabriel's gaze dropped briefly to the silhouette in his hand. What question? Whether Owen told the truth. Whether Sir Reuben forged his voice. Whether Ursula used fear to arrange a room. If we announce an engagement now, they will say, I am respectable because you chose me. I need them to understand that I was respectable before you did. The gallery became utterly quiet. Gabriel set the silhouette back upon the mantel with both hands. I love you, he said. There was no strategy in the words. No promise followed them. Constance felt the truth of them with painful clarity. It did not remove the timing. It made the refusal harder. I believe you. His breath changed. Do you love me? Constance looked at the scar, the restraint, the man who had learned to stop before touching and to listen after commanding. I may already. Hope entered his face and stopped there. Then why not say yes? Because Sir Reuben is still standing inside the question. Gabriel closed his eyes for one brief moment. When he opened them, the commander had withdrawn. Only the man remained. What must happen before I ask again? Ask when I do not need your name, your property, or your protection to answer freely. He absorbed the words without protest. Then I will ask after the truth is heard. Not immediately after. A faint, sorrowful smile touched his mouth. You negotiate even with love, especially with love. He inclined his head. Then I will wait. No kiss followed. No hand reached across the space. Constance left the gallery with Lady Davenant a few minutes later, carrying neither promise nor ring. Behind her, the silhouette remained beneath the pre-war portrait. Before her waited Hanover Square, the sealed letters, and a room full of people who had already decided what kind of woman she was. This time, she would not cross the floor to rescue a duke. She would cross it to reclaim her own name. On the 1st of August, the subscribers and trustees of the Waterloo Widows' Subscription Committee gathered in the Hanover Square rooms beneath tall windows that admitted more light than mercy. Widows occupied the front rows. Veterans stood along the walls. Committee patrons filled the center, their faces arranged into caution now that scandal threatened to become fact. Sir Reuben Palliser sat beside the chairman with Ursula at his right. Gabriel remained several paces behind Constance, close enough to act if she were silenced and far enough to honor his promise not to speak for her. Mr. Hallam placed the locked deed box upon the central table. Lady Davenant stood beside Constance. Mrs. Lane waited near the rear, with her hands clasped tightly. Mr. Webb had not yet entered. Sir Reuben rose before the chairman had finished calling the meeting to order. We are here because grief has been manipulated into spectacle, he said. A dead officer's final confession has been hidden, contradicted, and attacked by those with the greatest reason to suppress it. Ursula lowered her eyes as though sorrow had made speaking difficult. Miss Davenant has turned pity into influence. His Grace has mistaken guilt for devotion. Whatever papers they produce today, society should remember who benefits. Several heads turned toward Constance. One woman who had stepped away from Gabriel at the ball looked down at her gloves. The chairman lifted a hand. Miss Davenant has the right to question a document presented in her brother's name. Sir Reuben objected at once. She is not a trustee. The host of the rooms shifted uneasily. Gabriel did not move until the man looked toward the door. Then the Duke spoke once. Miss Davenant remains until the sealed papers are heard. No threat followed. None was needed. The host inclined his head. Constance stepped to the table, wearing clean gloves. Hallam unlocked the deed box and removed the packet bearing the Palliser and Rivenhall seals. Both impressions remained intact. He broke them before witnesses and unfolded the disputed letter beneath the light from the windows. Constance did not look first at the handwriting. She looked at Sir Reuben. You presented this as my brother's original letter written on the 20th of June, 1815. Because it is. You described its hand, its folds, and its date before witnesses. Yes. Constance lifted the lower edge, toward the window. The watermark appeared within the paper. Pale, unmistakable figures formed the year. 1816. Then how did my brother write it in June of 1815 upon paper marked for 1816? A stir moved through the room. Sir Reuben's expression changed only slightly. It may be a later copy. That is not what you claimed at Palliser House. A copy can preserve an original text. Then where is the original? Lost among committee papers, as was the 4-page letter you borrowed from my family. Sir Reuben's jaw tightened. You imply theft without proof. I ask about a document you said was original until the paper contradicted you. The chairman turned to Hallam. Can the date of the paper be established? Mr. Morrow came forward from the subscriber's side. He gave his name, his trade, and the address of his Fleet Street shop. Hallam showed him the disputed sheet without releasing it. Mr. Morrow identified the mark. The mould was cut in January of this year. No sheet bearing it was sold before February. Hallam then produced the attested ledger copy. On the 19th of February, a full ream was purchased by Mr. C. Webb for this committee and delivered to Palliser House. Sir Reuben laughed once. A secretary bought paper. That proves nothing beyond office work. It proves Captain Davenant did not write this letter when you said he did, Constance replied. The chairman looked toward the doors. Mr. Webb entered with Mr. Arden, his solicitor. Fear showed plainly in Webb's face, but he did not look toward Gabriel for rescue. Hallam asked only whether the statement he had given remained his own. It does, Webb said. Sir Reuben gave me Captain Davenant's letter from Belgium. He ordered me to imitate the hand. Later, he dictated the accusation. Sir Reuben rose. A debtor and a thief will say anything to save himself. Webb flinched. I borrowed from an account without authority and restored it. That was wrong. It does not make this page false. Hallam opened a separate fold and displayed the practice sheet. Rows of Owen's copied hand covered the paper. Darker corrections altered capitals and narrowed phrases. At the bottom stood the initials R.P. Those are not my corrections, Sir Reuben said. Hallam placed a committee memorandum beside the page. The same capital R bent sharply inward. The same P descended below the line. Constance pointed to the phrase, repeated 3 times. Kept silence regarding his conduct. Mr. Webb, whose wording is that? Sir Reuben's, and the promise of provision, his as well. Sir Reuben turned toward the trustees. You would accept the word of a frightened clerk over mine. No, Constance said. We accept the paper, the date, the purchase, the practice page, and the hand beside the corrections. Mr. Webb's testimony joins them. It does not replace them. Hallam opened Owen's authentic letter from its separate packet. Constance felt grief rise, but she remained standing. Only the necessary lines were read. Owen wrote that Gabriel had returned when retreat seemed the only sensible order. He wrote that the Duke placed himself between danger and a wounded man. He wrote that no blame belonged to him. A retired sergeant stepped forward and confirmed that Gabriel had gone back for Owen and received the scar while shielding him. Gabriel did not speak. He did not defend himself. He let Owen's words stand without borrowing them for glory. Sir Reuben looked toward Ursula. For the first time, calculation gave way to fear. Hallam then opened the sealed fold containing the lilac dance card. Mrs. Lane came forward. I saw Miss Palliser write those words, she said. All step back, then I advance. Ursula rose. They chose to move. I forced no one. You threatened relief lists, Mrs. Lane said. My husband's sister depended upon them. I obeyed because I was afraid. Her voice shook, but did not break. That was cowardly. It was still my choice. Constance looked at Ursula. Why did everyone need to step back before you advanced? I meant to restore dignity after the room recoiled. Why could you not approach him while other women remained? Ursula's face tightened. Because then it would have meant nothing. Nothing? To whom? To him? Or to you? Mrs. Lane asked quietly. Ursula turned on her. You don't understand. If they had not moved, he would still have had choices. The sentence reached every corner of the room. No confession could have been clearer. Ursula heard it too late. One trustee rose slowly. I knew relief names had been used to pressure families, he said. I told myself it was administrative discipline. I was wrong. The chairman's face hardened. By vote of the trustees, Sir Reuben was suspended at once. He was ordered to surrender committee keys and account books for examination. His access to relief lists and printing funds ended that day. The host asked him and Ursula to leave the rooms. Sir Reuben demanded Gabriel's endorsement. Gabriel answered only then. You will have no future patronage, no future credit, and no use of my name. Existing obligations to widows and honest tradesmen will be honored because they are not yours to punish. Ursula looked toward the women who had once stepped back for her. None moved to follow. There was no applause when the Palliser doors closed. Instead, the woman who had lowered her eyes at the beginning looked directly at Constance and held the gaze. It was not enough to erase what she had done. It was enough to show that she could no longer pretend not to see. Hallam returned Owen's letter to its packet and said the disputed claims would proceed through solicitors. Retractions would be required. The audit would continue. No one called, the matter finished. In the anteroom, away from the meeting, but within Lady Davenant's sight, Gabriel stopped beside Constance. May I remain? He asked. Yes. May I speak? Yes. His voice lowered. I will not ask you to marry me today. Relief and tenderness struck her together. Good. I am asking whether I may court you. No cottage, no settlement, no promise disguised as rescue, and no arrangement made before I answer. No. Constance looked at the man society had reduced to a scar, the Duke who had tried to protect her by deciding for her, and the man who had now stood silent while her proof spoke. You may court me. His breath left slowly. He lifted one hand and stopped. May I kiss you? Lady Davenant remained visible through the open doorway. Constance stepped closer. Yes. The kiss was brief, restrained, and more intimate for the permission that came before it. When Gabriel drew back, He did not claim her hand. He waited until she offered it. "Shall I take you home?" he asked. Constance looked toward the room where her brother's name had finally been restored. "Home," she said, placing her hand in his, "but not yours alone." On the morning of the 28th of September, Lady Davenant found the brass compass on Constance's dressing table and held it up, with the expression of a woman who had discovered a breach of discipline rather than a relic of the dead. "You are about to marry a duke, and you have forgotten the one object you never forget." Constance stood before the mirror while her maid fastened the final pearl button at her wrist. Her wedding gown was ivory silk without excessive ornament. Gabriel had asked what she wished to wear and had accepted her answer without summoning a dressmaker to improve it. "I did not forget it," Constance said. "I set it down while Hallam's letter was being read. That is a refined distinction." Lady Davenant placed the compass in Constance's palm and closed her fingers around it. "Take it with you. A woman should not enter a new life by abandoning the objects that helped her survive the old one." August had brought consequences, though not the theatrical ruin London had expected. Retractions appeared in the papers that had printed the purchased companion rumour. Sir Reuben was removed from every committee authority, and the examination of the accounts continued under trustees who no longer mistook silence for dignity. A private settlement had been signed through solicitors. 2 non-entailed properties had been offered for sale. Though neither transaction was complete, Ursula lost the patronesses whose approval had once made cruelty seem fashionable and left London to stay with an elderly relation. None of it restored the months Owen's voice had been used against the living. It did, however, make repetition more difficult than truth. Gabriel courted Constance through those weeks without arranging a future for her in advance. He visited Davenant House at permitted hours. He asked before sending books, and when she declined an expensive bracelet. No second jewel arrived disguised as modesty. After the final public retraction appeared, he came alone to the drawing room where Lady Davenant sat within sight. He offered no cottage, settlement, carriage, or promise of protection. He simply asked again. Constance answered freely. Now, as church bells carried through the September morning, Lady Davenant adjusted the fall of Constance's veil and studied her reflection. "Are you afraid?" "Yes." "Good. Only fools approach permanent decisions without fear. That is unusually comforting. I have never considered comfort the highest form of love." Constance slipped the compass into the small pocket sewn inside her gown. "Neither have I." St. George's, Hanover Square was full, but not crowded. By ducal standards, the ceremony was restrained. There were no newspaper correspondents inside, no procession designed for public admiration, and no row of guests invited merely to count titles. Veterans sat beside widows. Lady Davenant occupied the family pew with the authority of a woman who had earned every right to weep and refused to do so until the final blessing. Gabriel waited near the altar in dark formal clothes. He had made no effort to soften the scar along the left side of his face. Morning light crossed it openly. When Constance reached him, he did not take her hand until she offered it. "You came?" he said quietly. "You asked. I shall remember the order. See that you do." The ceremony proceeded without spectacle. When Constance spoke her vows, she did not feel herself disappearing into his title. She felt the title becoming responsible to the woman who accepted it. Gabriel's voice remained steady until he placed the ring upon her finger. Then the smallest break entered his breath. No one else might have noticed. Constance did. After the register was signed, Mr. Hallam approached, with a narrow-sealed packet and a receipt. "Your Grace," he said, then turned to Constance, correcting the direction of the words as carefully as he had once guarded the evidence. "This belongs to you." Owen's authentic letter lay within the packet, still folded along the same worn creases. Constance signed the receipt and held the letter against her palm. Gabriel looked at it, but did not reach. "Would you like me to carry it?" he asked. "No." "Very well." The answer held no injury. That mattered more than obedience would have done. Constance placed the letter beside the compass, inside the small travelling case. Lady Davenant would send with her after the wedding breakfast. When she and Gabriel stepped from the church, the crowd outside was modest and curious. Some had come to see the scarred Duke. Others had come to see the woman who had crossed a ballroom before society could finish rejecting him. Constance did not search the faces for approval. Gabriel did not turn his scar away from them. They entered the carriage together. The following morning, they left London for Elmstead Park in Surrey. The journey took nearly 5 hours, with a rest at an inn and a change of horses midway. Gabriel asked whether Constance preferred the faster road or the smoother one. He asked whether she wished to stop before the final stage. He asked which side of the carriage gave her the kinder light for reading Owen's letter. By the third question, Constance looked at him over the folded page. "You do understand that asking does not require a ceremony each time. I am attempting to establish a habit. A habit should eventually become less noticeable. Then I shall practice until you are properly unimpressed." Elmstead Park appeared beyond a long avenue of beech trees, its stone front warmed by late afternoon sun. No servants had been assembled outdoors for display. Gabriel had dismissed the idea after asking Constance whether she wanted a formal welcome. Inside, he showed her the principal bedchambers and paused before naming one hers. "Would you prefer these rooms or the smaller suite overlooking the east lawn?" "The east lawn." "Then those are yours." "And yours, whichever rooms you wish me to occupy." She gave him a level look. "Do not become absurd merely because you have discovered consent." A smile moved across his face. "The adjoining suite, then?" "Yes." He asked next about a studio. Constance chose a southern room with windows on 2 sides, not because it was distant from the family apartments, but because the light remained even through the day. "This is work," she said, "not retreat. I know, and no one enters without knocking, including a duke, especially a duke, a severe household. You were warned." Before dinner, Gabriel led her to the map room. The shutters had been opened. Charts of Surrey and neighbouring counties lay across the central table. Beneath the pre-war portrait he had moved from London rested the silhouette Constance had cut at Rivenhall House. He had packed it with his personal effects rather than entrusting it to a general household crate. The scar remained in the black profile. So did the truth. On a side table lay draft plans for an annual supper at Elmstead, for veterans, widows, and their families. The new relief lists required the signatures of 2 trustees. Accounts would be read at stated intervals. No patron could remove a name alone. Printing expenses would be matched to tradesmen's bills. Mr. Webb had accepted temporary clerkship through his own solicitor and remained accountable for his part in the forgery. Mrs. Lane had joined a committee in which no single household controlled relief. Constance read the final page and looked at Gabriel. "You have done much. The trustees have done much. And you, I provided a room, several arguments, and the occasional useful name. That sounds almost modest. Do not spread it about." She removed the brass compass from her traveling case and placed it upon the map table. The needle trembled, turned, and settled toward north. Gabriel stood beside her, without touching it. "You crossed the floor first," he said. Constance looked toward the open doors, leading from the map room into the sunlit corridor, "only because you remained standing." He offered his hand, then waited. She placed hers in it. Together they crossed the threshold.